Calling the meeting to order at 6:04. Has there been a declaration of public notice?
Yes.
Right. So I want to make the following introductions of the Board of Education members. So Elizabeth Cook, if you can wave your hand. Eric is not here. Philip Haven, Susan Manning, and Peter Sobel, and myself, Lorraine Gage. You weren't on here. You weren't on here. Sorry, Rochelle. Sorry. Okay. My apologies. All right. And our superintendent, Dan Olson. And the Director of Business Services Parliamentarian, Attorney Doug Whitty. Okay.
I'm only serving as the parliamentarian, Director of Business Services.
Oh, sorry. Parliamentarian, Attorney Doug Whitty. And then our Director of Business Services. Thank you. All right. So calling for nominations for election of a chairperson.
Oh, sorry. I'd like to nominate Lorraine Gage to serve as chairperson of this meeting.
Second.
Okay.
Judy Brown.
You know who I am.
Oh, I thought I needed your second.
You do, and you need to announce your name.
I did.
For the record.
I did.
Yes, you did. I know. Well, I should tweet.
All right, any further discussion? All right, I guess do we vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, motion is carried.
Gotta carry. Ask for names.
Any nays? All right, moving on. So I will be running the meeting. The minutes from the 2022 annual meeting and budget hearing can be found on pages 8 and 9 of the annual meeting booklet. All right, next is our superintendent report from Dan Olson.
Okay, good evening. So looking at the start of our school year, another, it's always excitement. Our students and families have been just off to a great start. We held, all of our schools except for the high school have held their open houses or back to school nights, and just such a positive response, from our families. We actually surveyed our families afterwards about their perceptions and how things went with the open houses, and just extremely positive feedback. And that certainly is a credit, of course, to our staff as well, who organized those events. So I'd like to talk just a little bit tonight about public funding, and of course you're going to get a detailed report from Mark Powell here in a little bit with regard to our actual budget and the budget hearing part. But just as a reminder that when we look at our overall budget, right, we know there's always two key pieces that fund our schools: our local property taxes and our state equalization aid. And the one thing in Wisconsin that we always need to remember is more aid does not necessarily mean more spendable revenue, that we are controlled by revenue limits. And so the two together really counterbalance one another. If there's an increase in state aid, that means then a decrease in reliance on local property taxes. And if there's a reduction in state aid, of course, then the property taxes generally have need to increase in order to get to that revenue limit. And so as a reminder, revenue limits have been with us for quite some time in Wisconsin. 1993 was when they were originally developed. And the idea, I think, presumably at the time was, for property tax relief, and that schools at the time relied pretty heavily on property taxes to fund their schools. And so really the most important thing to remember is we have a formula that's in place. Every school district in Wisconsin has a limit on what they can spend per child, and it's not the same in every school district. And it initially started based on where you're at in 1993, and then other factors can change that amount throughout the years, including local operational referendums. And as a reminder, in Wisconsin, the revenue limits really have not kept up with inflation For many years they did, up until about 2011, and then we saw a sharp decline in the per pupil revenue limit during that time. And we went from really being very well funded in comparison to other states in the nation to dropping quite a bit, from 11th back in 2002 down to about 25th in 2020. And that really was a scenario that led us, to look at the operational referendum that we had just last in April. And so with that, as Mark will explain in the budget hearing, we received an increase this past year of $325 per student in a revenue limit number, not anywhere close enough to keep up with that inflationary. So that really, again, confirmed the need for that operational referendum we had in the spring. And then another factor that goes into our budget, of course, is our enrollment. And you'll see from this chart, we knew that our long-range enrollment projections called for an increase in enrollment over time. Of course, those things vary a little bit from year to year. COVID certainly had an impact on that, but you'll see that we had a pretty significant jump for the current year. Our official enrollment count will come at the end of the week, but right now we're up about 160 students from a year ago. And that was not unplanned. That was very close to the projections we used last January when we were doing our staffing projections as well as open enrollment. And the referendum that we had in 2018 with regard to the facilities set up very well for us to be able to handle this growth. And so it's really right that the growth is as expected, but it's welcome to see that steady growth because that also supports us in the funding formula. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Mark Powell in the budget hearing portion.
Good evening. I can't see, so I'm assuming it's just a little bit of the budget overview, as Dan talked about, and the big factors are enrollment and property taxes and state aid as far as our budget development. The overview of the 2023-24 budget the process began in December. Did some budget crunching and some projections, and it was determined that with a lot of the COVID money going away, we were going to have a deficit, and so we were planning for a revenue limit referendum to exceed the revenue cap. In the first year, the revenue limit, it was approved to increase $6 million, and that is figured into the numbers that you have before you. The per pupil increase on the revenue limit was $325 per student. Our per pupil aid, which is outside the revenue limit, it's just another stream of money that we get from the state, is $742, which has been about the same number the last 5 or 6 years. As Dan talked about, we had expected an enrollment increase. We projected 50 students for resident enrollment, and then the additional that Dan had shown on there, we are accounting for open enrollment, that we get about $8,800 per student. So that's why the number was a little bigger than what I have on there as well. So the proposed tax levy, which is the purpose of the annual meeting, one of the purposes is $32,926,414, which is on page 18 of the packet. Overall, our revenue sources from that we receive on a yearly basis, we get almost 48% of our revenue from taxes and local sources. State revenue is about 43%. Payments from other districts, which is basically our open enrollment, is almost 9%. And then we have very little from the federal government, basically our title programs. And as I said, the ESSER money, COVID money, is going away, so that it was a significant drop for us than the prior years. On the expenditure side, we spend about 70% of our budget on salaries and benefits. Obviously, we're a people business, so that's a pretty heavy allocation that we need to provide. Purchase services, about 16%, which is utilities, busing, a lot of our maintenance expenses. Supplies and equipment is 4%. Debt service and insurance is about 1%, and the non-program is about 9%, which again is tuition and our open enrollment costs that we have to pay out as opposed to the revenue that comes in. And just to give a little history, Dan had talked about, the equalized aid that we get, and wanted to provide a summary for the last couple of years of how much aid we've increased over the years. And so that's helped with property values, and that's one of the reasons we felt we could go to the referendum as well, because we have been getting increase in aid, and that again helps lower our rate and spread that out over more people. So you can see we've gone from 13.3 to 19.5. That's the projection. Final numbers are will be after we certify the third Friday count, and the state certifies all the financials and gives us our aid allocation. That's usually around the 15th of October. And then again, as I talked before, the per pupil aid, you can see the history there. Starting in 18-19, we received $654, and then it's been $742 ever since that. So that's just another revenue stream from the state that's outside of any kind of taxing process. So this is a summary of our budget for the last 2 years plus projection. Obviously, we haven't closed the books yet on 22-23, so we're still working on that. But this is the budget in 23-24 is about what I gave to the board in June that was approved. So we will move forward with those dollar amounts until we receive the final revenue limit and aid calculations from the state. And just kind of quickly going through our different funds. We have Fund 21 and Fund 27. That's gifts and activity accounts and special ed. They're combined in one total on a lot of our financials. Then we have debt service, as we have built a couple of schools in the last 10 to 15 years. We need to pay for that. Fund 38 and Fund 39 are the two funds that we have to recognize. Fund 38 is non-referendum debt. So as an example, last spring we borrowed money for some projects, but we don't go to the citizens and ask for it. That's non-referendum, as opposed to Granite Ridge, which went to the citizens and they had to approve it. So it's just kind of two different ways to fund projects and buildings in the district. Fund 38 comes off of our revenue limit, so any payments we make lowers our revenue limit during those years that we repay the cost. In the packet, there's a list of what our debt, bless you, what our debt schedule is for the next, I think, 20 years or 50, whatever, till 38. I think we pay off the final one. And during the process too, we refinance as rates become better, and sometimes we have, the way we set finance, we have balloon payments, and so then we have to refinance that as well. But we try and stay within the parameters of the 20 years that we've gone out in the past. Fund 40 is where we do all the project recognition. All the expenses related to building Granite Ridge run through here. The borrowing that we did for the boilers and chillers and lighting at GDS run through here as well. And so at the end of the year, we should be close to expending all that money at the end of 23-24. Food service, self-sustaining. Program runs real well. As you can see, we have a significant fund balance that'll help us. We got a lot of money from COVID and the Fed, so hopefully that'll help us upgrade some equipment and maintain a staff that is compensated fairly as well. In Fund 80, this is our community services fund. We run expenses for the pool, the auditorium, and a RAP program, and also summer camps. So community service has to be open to everybody. You just can't be district students. So that's what allows us to have a separate levy for that to fund those. So this is a summary of our expenditures. It's pretty high level, but this is the reporting we need to do. So you can see that going forward, all of our expenditures are about $76.4 million, taking out our interfund transfers, which is kind of a duplicate. We're down to $71,282, which is about a 2% increase over the prior year as of now. As far as the levy goes, you can see that because of the $6 million increase in the referendum that was passed, we have a levy increase of about $4 billion on the general fund. And then debt service is about the same, just kind of reallocating based on our payment schedules through the two different funds, community service. And so we have a final total of 32,926,414, as I had mentioned before, which we knew was going to be higher with the referendum, so it's about a 14.5% increase over the prior year. This is a little history of our mill rate. You can see down in 16-17, it was at 13.89, and it has been going down and over and down and up a little bit for this current year. This is a projection because we don't have our final numbers yet, but this is based on the aid that they projected July 1st and an 8% increase in our equalized value. We'll get that October 1st as a final number. So as we continue to get information from the state and build the budget or finalize the budget, as Dan mentioned, third Friday count is this Friday. Certification of the equalized value that I indicated is 10/1, and then we get the certification of the equalized aid on 10/15. And then we will have a board meeting after that to have the board adopt the final budget and levy amount. So that's a question. Peter?
Should we go back to the community service fund?
Yep.
It's not in the packet.
Should have been.
Is that?
Yeah, just to the point of clarification, the odd pages are missing from the packet.
Ah, there you go.
So
Oh.
make sure that the correct one gets posted online.
Keep going back to the community service.
Sure.
It's not just me. There we go. All right, thank you. Thank you.
I've got a couple more somewhere. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so
Odd numbers,
business items. This is the fun part. We have resolutions that need to be adopted per state statute. The first one is adoption of the tax levy. As I indicated, the total levy for all funds is 32,926,414. And so I would, does she have to ask for a motion?
Yes, she does.
Okay.
Mark, you're taking my job.
I got you excited.
I'll break Citrus for you.
You're good. All right, can I have a motion, please, for the tax levy?
Judy, your turn.
I, Judy Run, 311 Asher Circle, Monona, move to approve 2023-24 tax levy in the amount of $32,926,414. Thank you.
Can I have a second?
Susan Fox, 4637 Bunnywater Trail, Monona. I second the motion.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? All right, motion is carried. All right, next is a motion. Can I have a motion for the authorization for salaries for school board members?
Yeah, Irene Foster of 3011 Red Hawk Trail, Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, moved to set the 2023-24 annual salaries of the school board members at an 8% increase from $3,700 to $3,996. Actually, I'll change that to $4,000 flat.
All right, any second?
Susan Fox, 4637 Bunnywater Trail, Monona. I second the motion.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Any nays? Okay, motion is carried. Next is the reimbursement of school board member-related expenditures. Can I have a motion, please? Susan?
Susan Fox, 4637, Tony Walker Trail, Monona. I move to authorize the reimbursement of school board members for expenses incurred in performance of duties.
Second?
I'm Judy Run from 311 Asher Circle. Move second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor? Any nays? Motion is carried. All right, next motion is regarding the school board date and time and place. Can I have a motion, please?
Just the authorization.
Susan Fox, 4637, Tony Walker Trail, Monona. I move to authorize the school board to establish the date, time, and place of the 2024 annual meeting and budget hearing.
Can I get a second?
Judy Run, second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, motion is carried. Other business, thank you. All right, can I have a motion for adjournment?
Aye, Peter Sobel, 6005, Midway, move the meeting be adjourned.
Okay, I'll second that.
All right, motion is carried. Or, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? All right, motion is carried. The meeting is adjourned.